chosen one. Pause for a moment. Do you feel it? The atmosphere around you is shifting quietly, deliberately, as if heaven itself has stopped to listen. This is not coincidence. This is divine orchestration. Tonight is not another night on your calendar. It is the line between what was and what will be. You've been waiting for something unseen, haven't you? A sign, a confirmation that all your pain, your patience, your perseverance have not been in vain. This is that moment. Heaven leans close because your story is about to turn a sacred page. There once was another chosen one, a young man named David, left alone in the fields while others were chosen before him. He sang songs to the sheep and to the stars, never realizing that those melodies were writing the preface of a kingdom. God often hides his next kings in the quiet corners of ordinary places. You, too, have been hidden, but not forgotten. Your waiting has not been wasted. Every disappointment, every detour, every lonely night was divine ink. God was writing character in you before he wrote destiny around you. Like an artist sketching in silence before unveiling a masterpiece, he was forming the outlines of your calling. Tonight, the canvas changes. The author lifts his pen again. The ink glows. The page breathes. You can almost feel it, an invisible turning. A sacred rhythm, aligning your heartbeat with heaven's pulse. The story of your life is being touched by divine handwriting. Think back to the nights you almost gave up, to the moments you said, "Maybe I misheard God." Those weren't endings. They were rehearsals for revelation. The delay was divine timing, disguised as silence. Heaven never abandons what it anoints. It simply waits for the appointed hour. And that hour is now. Listen closely. Somewhere beyond what you can see, angels are adjusting the scenery of your life. What you lost in one season is being rewritten in another. You are moving from endurance to emergence, from hidden to heralded, from preparation to fulfillment. Imagine a quill dipped in light. Imagine heaven's ink flowing across the pages of your destiny. Every line written tonight is mercy rewriting memory, grace healing what pain once edited. This is what happens when the author himself refuses to let your story end in ashes. You are stepping into a divine chapter where peace will replace panic and purpose will silence confusion. God is not only writing for you, he is writing through you. Your story will become someone else's survival guide. As we find written in the book of Psalms, chapter 138, verse 8, "The Lord will perfect that which concerns me, your mercy. O Lord, endures forever. Do not forsake the works of your hands." That means no part of your story is beyond repair. No broken sentence is too messy for his mercy to rewrite. You don't have to understand how, you just have to believe he is still writing. So breathe, let go of what could have been, and open your hands to what's becoming. Every second, from now until dawn, carries the weight of promise. The heaven that once felt distant is now within reach. If these words stir something in your spirit, take a moment to act in faith, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss what God continues to release through these messages. Your simple act of faith could be the spark that lights another soul's hope tonight. And before you go, type the number 777 inches. The comments not as superstition, but as a sign of spiritual alignment, a declaration that you are stepping into divine completion and heavenly timing. Heaven pauses for you. Chosen one, The ink is ready. The page is turning. Step in your greatest chapter begins tonight. Heaven is not silent. It's scripting. The same God who spoke galaxies into being is now whispering the next line of your purpose. Even as you read this, unseen forces are moving, aligning names, doors, and moments to meet you at the appointed intersection of destiny. You are not behind schedule. You are right on time. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel that pull in your chest. That's not emotion. That's recognition. Your spirit knows that what's happening tonight is real. You are being written into a story bigger than your pain, deeper than your questions. The author of eternity is writing in you, through you, and for you. So, stand tall, chosen one. Lift your head as one who carries divine ink in their veins. Every step you take from this night forward will echo with purpose. Your tomorrow is not waiting, it's unfolding. Heaven has begun your chapter. You were never random. Every turn, every silence, every door that refused to open has been part of a design you could not see. You might have thought life was scattering you, but in truth, heaven was arranging you like pieces of glass being fitted into a stained window only light can complete. There is something sacred about the way God orchestrates timing. When you felt forgotten, you were being refined. When you thought He had turned away, He was simply aligning the next scene of your destiny. The waiting wasn't punishment, it was precision. Do you remember the days when everything you touched seemed to fall apart? The job that didn't work out, the relationship that ended suddenly, the prayer that stayed unanswered? Each of those moments was a secret conversation between God's will and your future. What you called failure, heaven called foundation. Think of a seed buried underground. It disappears into darkness, pressed by soil, surrounded by silence. But what looks like death is actually preparation. In hiddenness, the seed breaks, and only then does life begin to move upward. That's what happened to you. You were planted, not forgotten. Heaven buried you to grow you. There was once another chosen one, a young woman named Esther. She didn't ask for her crown. She didn't chase her palace. She was carried there by a current she could not control. For a time, she lived unnoticed, learning the language of kings while hiding the bloodline of her people. Yet at the appointed moment, heaven unveiled her purpose to save a nation. You, too, have an Esther moment. You are being positioned quietly, strategically. The places where you've been silent are about to become platforms of divine speech. Every skill, every wound, every waiting season is gathering into one divine reason. You were chosen for such a time as this. You may not understand why certain people left, why plans fell apart, or why doors stayed closed. But if you look closely, you'll see the fingerprints of mercy in the wreckage. Some rejections were redirections. Some delays were shields. Some endings were the kindness of God disguised as disappointment. Life often feels like a maze of contradictions. But in the kingdom of heaven, nothing is wasted. Even detours are destiny in disguise. The storms that tried to drown you taught you to breathe under pressure. The loneliness that haunted you built your intimacy with God. The pain that broke you made space for compassion to live. It's strange, isn't it? How the path of the chosen one rarely makes sense until you look back. You see now how the heartbreaks aligned with lessons, how the closed doors led to redemptive openings, how every unanswered prayer turned out to be protection in slow motion. Heaven was never late. It was simply waiting for you to be ready. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 9, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. That verse is the quiet truth of your story. You planned, you dreamed, you tried, and still, life took turns you couldn't predict. But those turns were not chaos, they were choreography. You've been walking on a path that heaven mapped long before you could see it. The light of destiny often shines brightest through the cracks of confusion. So if your plans have fallen apart, it's not proof of failure, it's proof that heaven is intervening. You were never random. You were always written. Every chapter before this one was designed to prepare your spirit for what's about to unfold. So walk on with steady steps. You don't need to force anything open. The same God who wrote the stars into position knows how to position you. Trust the timing, even when it feels slow. Trust the silence, even when it feels empty, because in that stillness, heaven is building the next line of your legacy. You are exactly where you need to be. Every breath, every choice, every detour has brought you to this sacred intersection. The page is turning again, and this time, you'll understand why every delay was necessary. The unseen hand of God is still guiding you. Even now, what feels like uncertainty is simply heaven's choreography, arranging miracles quietly behind the curtain of your everyday life. Nothing about you is accidental. Every closed door has been a redirection toward purpose. Every silence has trained your spirit to hear whispers others miss. The author writes slowly because eternal stories take time. So breathe. Chosen one. The ink of heaven hasn't run dry. You are still being written, line by line, layer by layer, into something extraordinary that only divine timing can reveal. There are pages in your story that still carry the scent of smoke chapters that ended in fire. Words burned by pain. Dreams reduced to ash. You've tried to forget them, tried to move on. Yet every now and then, you still feel the heat. But hear this, those pages are not your shame, they are your evidence. They prove that even in flames, you survived. God never wastes what was burned. The ashes you carry are ingredients for your anointing. Every tear, every disappointment, every shattered plan, He collects it all, and from it, He creates the ink that writes your next victory. Do you remember Job, a righteous man who lost everything, wealth, family, reputation? His story looked like ruin, but it was actually restoration in disguise. When the fires stopped, what emerged was stronger, purified, and brighter than before. You, too, have walked through that furnace. You've questioned why the fire came. But one day, you will understand that it burned away everything that could not stay. The world may have called it destruction, but heaven called it refinement. Fire does not destroy gold, it defines it. You are being defined not by your losses, but by what survived the flames. There once was a chosen one named Elior, a craftsman who worked with metal and flame. When his workshop caught fire, everything he built was reduced to ash. For weeks, he sat among the ruins, too broken to rebuild. Then one morning, as sunlight touched the embers, he saw that the fire had revealed something unexpected. The foundation stone of his forge had cracked open to reveal veins of silver beneath. The fire didn't just take it uncovered. What he thought was ruin was actually revelation. That's what God is doing in you. He's revealing the silver veins' hidden strength, buried wisdom, deeper faith. You wouldn't have found them without the flames. What burned was never meant to last. What remains is what was eternal all along. The Word of God declares in the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 3, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. Oh, look at the exchange: ashes for beauty, mourning for joy, despair for praise. God never takes without returning something greater. You may have lost pieces of yourself in the fire, but the ashes you hold are the proof of transformation. From them, He is shaping a crown. Do not be ashamed of your scars. They are holy reminders that fire cannot consume what heaven protects. Scars do not mean defeat, they mean survival. They mean resurrection. So, pause here and let this truth sink in. Your story didn't end in the burning, it began there. God is not afraid of your ashes. He specializes in turning ruins into revelations, graves into gardens, endings into awakenings. Comment, rise again. Let those two words become your declaration tonight. Write them not just with your fingers, but with your faith. When you type them, you're not merely posting, you're prophesying. You're telling your past, you didn't win. You're telling your fear, you won't stop me. You're telling heaven, I'm ready for the rewrite. The fire you endured was the turning point. The smoke is clearing now, and through it, the next page gleams with divine light. The author is still writing, and this time, he's writing glory where there was once grief. The rising from ashes is not instant, it's gradual, sacred, and unseen, like dawn stretching across a wounded sky. Your new light grows quietly. Every step forward, no matter how small, declares that pain no longer rules your story. Purpose does. Heaven never forgets the ones who walked through fire. The fragrance of endurance lingers around them, marking them as living testimonies. You are that fragrance now, proof that survival is not the end goal. Transformation is. You don't just live, you emerge, radiant. The fire may have changed your surroundings, but it did not change your essence. In fact, it revealed who you truly are, unyielding, luminous, and eternal. You learned that divine strength is not loud, it's the steady heartbeat after chaos. Now, when people look at you, they'll see the reflection of grace instead of the residue of grief. Your scars will speak in silence, telling others that God restores beauty more powerfully than life ever broke it. So walk boldly from the ashes. You no longer need to explain what was lost. Heaven has already rewritten it. Your steps now are sentences of light, and every breath you take is part of the greatest chapter being written through you. When heaven repositions you, it rarely feels like promotion. Most times, it feels like loss. Things begin to move. People drift away. And what once felt solid starts to tremble beneath your feet. You look around and wonder, what is happening to me? Yet in those unsettling moments, heaven is at work, pulling you out of places that no longer fit the shape of your purpose. Repositioning is not rejection, it's redirection. God cannot elevate you while you're still anchored to what was. Sometimes the shaking is the sound of heaven loosening the chains you've mistaken for comfort. You might remember Abraham, told to leave everything familiar, his home, his land, his lineage. God gave no detailed map, only a promise: go to the land I will show you. It was a movement without coordinates, a journey guided by trust. That is how repositioning works. It requires faith that sees in the dark. There was another chosen one, a woman named Leora. She had prayed for years for stability, a steady job, lasting friendships, predictable peace. Then everything changed. In a month, her position was eliminated. Her closest friend moved away, and doors she had relied on shut tight. She thought she had been abandoned, but months later, the same empty space became an opening for a calling she never imagined. Leora discovered that when God removes your anchors, He intends to teach you to sail. The same principle echoes in your life. The relationships that faded were not failures. They were seasons expiring. The opportunities that vanished were not stolen. They were redirected. God cannot plant you in new soil if you keep clinging to the old ground. It's strange how divine movement often feels like chaos. You lose track of what you thought was certain. Plans unravel. Your heart asks questions heaven does not immediately answer. But repositioning is the language of divine precision. He shifts you when standing still would suffocate your growth. Consider a chessboard. Every piece has its purpose, yet the strategy is unseen to those in the middle of the game. You might feel like you're being pushed around, but heaven is moving you toward checkmate, toward victory that requires every displacement. And sometimes, the repositioning happens internally. God adjusts your desires, refines your motives, and untangles your attachments. He changes what you want so He can give you what you truly need. You begin to outgrow what once satisfied you because your spirit is evolving. The world calls it uncertainty. Heaven calls it transformation. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. Repositioning demands surrender. It asks you to release the map and trust the compass. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 37, verse 23. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and He delights in His way. No, every step, whether it feels forward, sideways, or backward, is still ordered. You may think you're lost, but the author never misplaces his characters. Every detour you take is a divine coordinate on the route to your purpose. The transition may ache. You may miss what was familiar. But don't confuse comfort with calling. Comfort feels safe. Calling feels stretching. God's repositioning is the process of removing everything that limits your next level of obedience. In this season, He may be moving you away from people who no longer align with your mission, not because they are evil, but because your growth requires different soil. He may be calling you to release dreams that have finished their assignment. The hardest part of being chosen is learning to say goodbye without bitterness. If you could see heaven's map, you'd realize how intentional the movement truly is. Nothing is random. Even the pauses are purposeful. God knows exactly where you need to stand for your destiny to unfold. Think of a symphony, instruments tuning, notes clashing, chaos before harmony. Yet the composer hears the melody even in the noise. That's how heaven hears your life right now. You may only sense confusion, but God hears the masterpiece forming underneath. So don't resist the shift. Embrace it. Repositioning is proof that you've outgrown old battles and are being prepared for new victories. The chapter you're entering won't begin where the last one ended. It begins in a new place, on higher ground. You are not losing control, you're being aligned. What feels like being scattered is actually you being sown. Seeds must leave the hand to fulfill their purpose. And just like that, you are being released into fertile ground where your next season will bloom. The shaking isn't to break you, it's to free you. Every move heaven makes is for your increase. The page has turned again. And even if the scenery looks unfamiliar, it is exactly where you are meant to be. The night carries a stillness that feels sacred, doesn't it? You can sense something shifting softly, silently, as though heaven itself has leaned closer to your life. This is the hour when God writes unseen sentences into the fabric of your destiny. The world sleeps, but heaven works. The ink moves only for those who are awake in spirit. This is what I call the mantle of midnight, the invisible covering that descends when the noise of day fades and divine hands begin to turn unseen pages. In these hours, angels walk through the corridors of time, arranging the next lines of your story. And though your eyes may not see it, your soul can feel it. The mantle of midnight is not fearful darkness, it's sacred preparation. It's the moment heaven writes in light while the earth still dreams. Every whisper of the wind carries a sentence of purpose. Every flicker of your heart is God's pen, brushing the next word of your calling. Have you ever noticed how the greatest turning points in Scripture often came at night? Jacob wrestled with destiny until dawn. Paul received visions while others slept. Even the resurrection's first witnesses came before sunrise. While the sky was still grey with silence, God works most profoundly when the world grows still. And right now, He is writing in that stillness, again, your story, your redemption, your rise. The midnight you once feared has become holy ground. There was a man named Theron, another chosen one, hidden in history. For years, he worked in obscurity, crafting lamps for the temple that no one saw. One night, as he molded the last piece of metal by candlelight, the flame suddenly flared blue. In that moment, he felt something shift in his spirit, an awareness that what he made in silence would soon light the steps of kings. That's what the mantle of midnight does. It marks unseen people for visible purpose. You have been walking through your own midnight, haven't you? You've questioned why it had to be dark so long, why your prayers seem to echo instead of being answered. But darkness doesn't mean absence, it means incubation. Seeds don't sprout under sunlight, they begin beneath the soil, where no one watches. The unseen is sacred, as was spoken in the book of Job, chapter 35, verse 10. But no one says, "Where is God, my Maker?" Who gives songs in the night? Do you see it? Songs in the night. Heaven writes melodies while the world sleeps. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the faint hum of your next chapter beginning to form a rhythm of mercy, a chorus of redemption, a verse of promise. The mantle of midnight covers you not to hide you, but to protect the unfolding. Like an artist draping a canvas until the masterpiece is ready, God veils what He values. You may not yet see the picture, but heaven is already admiring it. When morning comes, the world will see only the result. They will call it sudden favor, overnight success, unexpected breakthrough. But you will know It was written in the quiet. It was birthed between whispers and waiting. And when that moment arrives, when dawn finally breaks, you will stand not as one who stumbled into blessing, but as one who was shaped by it. You'll carry the fragrance of midnight, the humility of waiting, the strength of faith, the calm of trust. So if this message finds you tonight, in your own hour of silence, remember this: the pen of heaven has not stopped. The ink is alive. The pages are turning. The author is writing your becoming. And now, if your spirit feels this resonance, this stirring inside, that words can't fully name, then let that be your response. Don't force it. Don't overthink it. Simply breathe. And when you're ready, let your heart whisper, "I receive my midnight mantle." If this word feels like home to your spirit, then do something gentle, like a candle passed through a storm, glowing quietly, but refusing to die. Let your light travel, share this message the way a lamp shares flame, spreading warmth into another's midnight. And if your soul desires to remain close to this flow of divine words, let your connection be simple and pure. Subscribe, not out of duty, but as a silent yes to keep walking beside the author as he writes. And before the page turns, leave a trace of your faith, like a footprint on sacred ground, a quiet echo that says, "I was here when heaven wrote." Lay, because tonight, while the world sleeps, heaven is awake, writing your greatest chapter yet. Something begins to stir in the atmosphere of your spirit. You can sense it, though you can't yet explain it. Heaven is whispering your name again, softly but surely. The air feels heavier, charged with divine anticipation. This is not imagination, it's alignment. Something in the unseen is about to touch the seen. You've walked through the silence, endured the fire, and survived the shifting ground of divine repositioning. Now, heaven begins to move differently around you. This is the moment of agreement, when what was promised starts reaching toward you, and your heart must reach back. Every divine chapter requires your response, not your performance, not your perfection, just your yes. Heaven writes, but you must step into the sentence. This is the space where faith becomes a bridge. Between what you can't see and what you've been promised lies a single word: agreement. The invisible only manifests when the chosen one says, "I'm ready." There was once a man named Azael, a quiet shepherd who spent years tending sheep while hearing rumors of prophets and kings. One night, as he looked over the hills, he felt a strange pull in his chest. A knowing without words. He dropped to his knees and whispered, "I will go where you send me." From that moment, his life unraveled from the ordinary and wove into the extraordinary. All it took was a yes in the dark. That is the season you are standing in right now, the in-between of calling and confirmation. You are being summoned by heaven to step into what's been waiting for you since before time. The same God who wrote galaxies is writing your obedience into the timeline of miracles. Scripture says in the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." Now, this is your moment to step in, not shrink back. The command to be courageous is not about confidence, it's about trust. God wouldn't tell you to move if the way wasn't already prepared. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the presence of faith walking forward despite it. Think of this season as standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The tide is rising. The wind is whispering, and you can see only a few steps ahead. Yet, deep within, something says, "Step." That's not risk, it's revelation. Heaven always calls you to move before you see the miracle. Many chosen ones stop here. They hear, but they hesitate. They sense, but they stall. Yet the current of destiny only carries those who dare to place their feet in the water. You've prayed for change, but change begins with movement. The door will not swing open until your hand reaches for the handle, and that's why tonight, heaven is waiting for your small but sacred sign of agreement. Leave a mark in this moment. Comment the number 22 below. It's not superstition, it's a symbol. In the language of divine numbers, 22 represents foundation and fulfillment. It is the number of completion meeting creation. It speaks of the moment when what was once spoken in heaven finally becomes visible on earth. When you write it, you're not just typing digits, you're declaring, "I agree with what heaven is building." It's your way of saying, "I step into divine fulfillment." The number becomes a key unlocking alignment between your heart and heaven's rhythm. Think of 22 as the turning of two gates, one from heaven, one from your spirit, meeting in perfect symmetry. When they align, the path between destiny and manifestation opens. The angels assigned to your story move faster. The pages of your life begin to turn smoother, and everything that once resisted begins to yield. Because tonight isn't just about what God will do for you, it's about what He will do through you. The moment you agree, heaven starts writing through your obedience. Angels move. Paths open. Favor rearranges itself around your name. Every chosen one must reach the point where they say, "I'm not waiting for perfect timing. I am the timing." That's when the page turns. That's when the ink flows faster. That's when destiny stops being a dream and becomes direction. So if the atmosphere around you feels different tonight, don't resist it. The stirring you sense is heaven's way of saying, "Step in now. The light you've been waiting for is already shining, just beyond your next act of faith." The words you speak tonight echo louder than you realize. Heaven listens closely when obedience breathes, and the page of your life, already prepared, waits for that final mark, your yes. No. Comment 22. Let it be your silent covenant with heaven. Your way of saying, "I choose to walk where God writes." Lo, He is writing your next chapter in real time. The pen moves as you respond. Your name has always been known in heaven, long before you took your first breath. Before anyone spoke your worth aloud, it was already written. Every line of your story was marked with intention. Every heartbeat counted. Every tear recorded. You were never an accident in the divine narrative. You were a sentence God refused to leave unwritten. There's something mysterious about being known by name in the unseen realm. Heaven recognizes you not by your failures or fears, but by your purpose. When God calls your name, it carries weight. It's not sound, it's assignment. Each syllable of your identity vibrates with meaning, written into the eternal scrolls before your time began. There was a prophet once, Hosea, whose very life became a message. God told him to marry a woman who would leave him, to live a story that seemed full of heartbreak. But even through betrayal and pain, God's word to Hosea was this: "I have called you to show my love through what you live, not just what you say." Hosea's name means salvation. His story was difficult, but his name carried purpose. So does yours. The world may not always understand your calling, and at times, even you may question why your life looks the way it does. But heaven sees your name differently. You are not defined by circumstance. You are defined by calling. When God inscribed your name in his book, he didn't write it in ink that fades. He wrote it in eternity's light. That's why the enemy has always tried to attack your identity, to make you forget who you are and whose you are. Because the moment you remember your name, you remember your power. In ancient times, names were not just identifiers, they were prophecies. Each name declared destiny, design, and divine intent. Abram became Abraham, the father of nations. Sarai became Sarah, mother of promise. Saul became Paul, messenger of grace. When heaven changes your name, it's not cosmetic, it's covenantal. Sometimes, God doesn't change your physical name, but he restores the meaning behind it. Maybe the world called you failure, but heaven still calls you chosen. Maybe others labeled you broken, but heaven still whispers, beloved builder of light. The rewriting of identity always precedes the unfolding of destiny. You've probably noticed seasons when you felt unseen, unheard, or misplaced, as if no one called your name for a while. That silence wasn't neglect, it was incubation. Heaven was hiding you until the right moment when your name would be spoken again with authority. When a king calls a servant by name, it's not casual, it's commissioning. When heaven calls you by name, it's because your next assignment is ready. You're being summoned into visibility. As the apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 9, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor have entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for those who love him. That verse is more than promise, it's identity. It means your name is connected to things unseen. What's coming for you has no earthly reference point, because heaven has been crafting it in silence. The recognition you seek on earth is already finished in heaven's archives. Picture it, a celestial library filled with scrolls. On one of those scrolls is your name. The angels know it. The light of God shines upon it. And every time you move in obedience, another line gets written. Another promise comes alive. You were never forgotten. Even when you walked through seasons that felt like exile, heaven never erased you from the record. The silence was not deletion, it was divine waiting. You were being edited for excellence. Sometimes, heaven calls your name not to remind you of where you are, but of where you're meant to go. Like Samuel hearing his name in the dark. You are being summoned into awakening. God is speaking your name again, not as a memory, but as a mandate. And when heaven speaks your name, creation responds. The ground beneath you recognizes it. Doors begin to open because they remember the sound of divine authorship. Your name carries authority because it's written by the one who never makes a mistake. So stand still for a moment. Let that truth sink deep into your bones. You are known. You are recorded. You are remembered in the eternal storyline of redemption. Every time you doubt your worth, remember, your name is not just spoken, it is sung over by heaven. The next time you feel small or invisible, whisper your name out loud, not to remind the world, but to remind your soul. Let it echo in your own ears as a declaration. I am written, I am called, I am chosen, and because you are not just in God's story, your name is part of its title. The breaking before becoming that is the hidden rhythm of every chosen one's journey. It is the quiet truth the world rarely sees. Before the crown comes the crushing. Before the rising comes the ruin. Before the testimony comes the tearing apart. You know this pattern well, don't you? You've lived through seasons that felt like the very ground was giving way beneath you. Dreams you once held tightly began to slip through your fingers. People you trusted walked away. Everything stable seemed to shatter. And you were left asking, why must it hurt so much to be chosen? The answer is both beautiful and brutal. Breaking is the birthplace of becoming. God never breaks to destroy. He breaks to reveal what's hidden. Just as a seed must crack open for the sprout to emerge, so too must your comfort be split apart for your calling to be born. Pain is not a punishment, it's a passage. The same God who formed you in gentle love now refines you in holy fire. He breaks what limits your light, not what defines your worth. There was once a young potter named Avel in a quiet village. He spent years shaping clay, perfecting each curve and edge. One day, a customer returned with a shattered vase that had once been Avel's favorite piece. Heartbroken, he swept the fragments into a corner and left them there. Days later, rain leaked through the roof and touched the shards. The water settled into the cracks. Glimmering in the sunlight, Avel suddenly realized that even brokenness could reflect light more beautifully than perfection ever could. That is what God does with you. He allows the breaking so that His light can flow through your cracks. If your life had remained unbroken, His glory would have stayed hidden behind your strength. We find it written in the book of Psalms, chapter 34, verse 18. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Then too, it's not a distant promise, it's a present reality. In the moment of your deepest breaking, heaven does not stand far off. It moves closer. The cracks become invitations. The wounds become entry points for divine presence. Breaking seasons feel lonely, but they are sacred workshops of transformation. God dismantles what cannot carry His next level of glory in you. He removes false strength, outdated identities, and shallow ambitions, because where He is taking you, only authenticity can survive. Every breaking carries a blueprint. Some seasons shatter your pride, so humility can rise. Others dismantle comfort, so courage can grow. And some breaks are meant to end your dependence on people, so you can rediscover your dependence on God. It's easy to romanticize healing, but forget that it begins with breaking. The butterfly cannot exist without the collapse of the caterpillar. The alabaster jar cannot release its fragrance until it's broken. Even the bread Jesus blessed had to be broken before it could feed the multitude. There's a divine paradox hidden in pain. Your fragments are not your failure, they are your foundation. What fell apart externally is strengthening something eternal within you. And though it may not feel like it now, you will look back and see that the breaking made you bold. It stripped you of illusions. It purified your motives. It awakened compassion. It taught you the strength that silence carries and the wisdom that tears whisper. You are not defined by what broke. You are defined by what survived. And what survived in you is holy. Sometimes, heaven uses heartbreak to make room for wholeness. The noise of loss becomes the silence where revelation can finally speak. And slowly, something inside you shifts. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "Thank you for trusting me with this." And when you reach that point, The breaking turns into birthing. The same hands that allowed your world to crumble are now shaping a masterpiece from your dust. What once hurt now heals others. What once seemed shattered becomes a window for others to see God's light. Do not despise the cracks. Chosen one, they are proof that you are being remade, not removed. The breaking is temporary, but the becoming is eternal. One day, you'll stand where pain once stood and realize you've become what the storm could not destroy, a vessel of light, refined by fire, unshakable and new. The breaking was never meant to bury you. It was meant to bloom you. Out of the dust of surrender, a stronger, softer version of you begins to rise. Heaven always rebuilds with precision. Every scar becomes architecture. Every fracture, a doorway. You are no longer the same. You are beautifully remade. There comes a moment when silence becomes invitation, when the quiet between heaven and earth is not absence but expectancy. You have felt that pull before. The stillness right before something holy begins. That's where you are now. The atmosphere around you feels charged. And though you can't see it, heaven is leaning close, waiting for your response. This part of your journey isn't about asking anymore, it's about answering. God has already spoken over you. Now He waits to hear you speak back. The next chapter of your life isn't unlocked by explanation, but by declaration. Do you remember Samuel, a boy asleep in the temple, stirred by a voice he did not yet recognize? 3 times he heard his name, and 3 times he ran to the wrong person. It wasn't until the 4th time that he finally said the words that changed his destiny. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. It was the simplest response, but it became the key to his calling. That same whisper reaches you now. Heaven is speaking again, softly but clearly. You've prayed for answers, but what heaven wants tonight is agreement. Obedience doesn't always begin with movement, it begins with listening. The stillness you're in is not delay, it's instruction. Every chosen one must learn the sacred art of still obedience, of saying yes, even before knowing the full direction. There was once a woman named Neria who lived near the edge of a desert town. She would spend evenings sitting by her window, waiting for a sign that her prayers were heard. One night, as wind swept through the streets, her lamp flickered out. In the quiet, she whispered, "I'm listening." The next morning, she found her answer, not in thunder, not in miracles, but in the peace that filled her chest. Listening had changed everything. Heaven's voice is not always loud. Sometimes it hides inside coincidences, conversations, or the sudden calm that settles after tears. When your spirit grows quiet enough, you start to hear it, the rhythm of divine conversation, the gentle guidance of the unseen. According to what is written in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 19, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Listening is more than hearing, it's surrender. It's the posture of trust. When you choose to listen, you're telling heaven, I don't need control, I need clarity. And in that surrender, God begins to reveal what action must follow. Maybe that's why this section feels so still, because the next part of your story requires quiet faith, not loud striving. Heaven doesn't need your panic, it needs your presence. The answers you've been searching for are not hidden from you. They're waiting for you to slow down enough to notice them. This is the holy pause before progress, the sacred breath between chapters. Every word that will follow is being prepared in heaven's silence right now. You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. You only need to say what Samuel said, what Neria said, what every listening soul must say, I am ready. Then, that's your declaration tonight. That's your doorway. Comment, I am ready. End of quote. Those 3 words are not a shout, they are a seal. When you type them, you are not announcing to the world, you are answering heaven. It's a personal whisper of agreement between your soul and its source. You are saying, I trust you to lead me, even when I can't see where this road goes. End of quote. In the spiritual realm, readiness carries power. When you declare it, something shifts. The unseen begins to respond. Doors that were held shut by hesitation start to loosen. Peace begins to move where confusion once lived. You are aligning yourself with motion, with momentum, with divine flow. Because readiness is not about being strong, it's about being willing. Heaven doesn't wait for perfect people. It moves through surrendered ones. And when God hears your quiet, I am ready, He begins to unfold the chapter that's been waiting since the foundation of the world. So, let those words rise softly within you. Speak them not as reaction, but as revelation. You are not just prepared for what's next, you were made for it. Heaven is speaking. Chosen one. All creation leans in for your answer. Whisper it now, I am ready. And the pen of God will begin to move once more. Those 3 words, I am ready, are more than a sentence. They are a signal. When spoken from the heart, they tell heaven, my waiting is over. My surrender is complete. Begin. Lord, write. End. There is a moment when heaven turns the pen, and the story that once felt fragmented begins to align in perfect rhythm. You feel it deep within the gentle pull of divine rearrangement. The no's that once hurt start making sense. The detours form a pattern. The disappointments reveal their hidden mercy. God is rewriting what was once confusing into a masterpiece of clarity. For so long, you've walked through questions that echoed without answer. Why did that door close? Why didn't it work? Why was I left behind? Yet now, in this sacred turning, you begin to see that what once felt like rejection was divine redirection. The author was never silent, he was editing. When heaven turns the pen, it's not to erase you, it's to refine you. The parts of your story that felt like mistakes become metaphors. The pain becomes poetry. The silence becomes the space where new sentences are born. Think of Joseph, betrayed by his brothers, imprisoned for what he didn't do, forgotten by those he helped. Yet in the end, the same pit that looked like the end of his story became the passage to the palace. Heaven never wastes pain, it simply repurposes it for promise. The same principle is unfolding in your life. You thought certain chapters had closed permanently, but God is opening them again with new meaning, new characters, and new light. Nothing that was meant for you has been lost. It's only being rewritten to fit a higher purpose. There was once a sculptor named Amaria who spent months carving a statue from marble. One day, a crack appeared in the stone, running straight through the figure's center. Furious, she nearly destroyed it, but something within her whispered, "Look again." Under the sunlight, the crack caught the light, reflecting it beautifully across the surface. She realized what had seemed like ruin was actually revelation. The imperfection had become the masterpiece's defining beauty. That's what God is doing with your story. He's using the cracks to reflect His glory. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in the book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Read it slowly. In all things. Not some, not most, but all. The heartbreak, the waiting, the mistakes, the miracles, they're all working together in one divine sentence of purpose. This turning of the pen is subtle but powerful. It's the sacred moment when God takes what the enemy wrote as tragedy and rewrites it as testimony. The ink of redemption flows quietly, without fanfare, but its effect changes everything. You'll soon find that what once made you weep will now make you worship. You'll look back at the pages that broke you and realize they were necessary. They carried the lessons that molded your wisdom, the humility that anchored your strength, the grace that softened your voice. The pen is in motion now. Heaven is revising your timeline, restoring what was lost, and realigning every word with its original promise. And when that chapter fully unfolds, your story will read differently. People will see light where there was once shadow. They will call you favored where they once called you forgotten. So let this moment become your quiet act of faith. If this word resonates within you, if you can feel heaven's pen moving even now, then do something simple, something symbolic. Share this message like one would pass a letter of hope to another traveler on the same road. Let your light travel through someone else's midnight. You never know which heart might be waiting for that spark. And if your soul finds home here, remain close to the flow. Subscribe, not as routine, but as relationship. Let it be your way of saying, I want to keep walking beside the author while he writes. End pie. Finally, before this page closes, leave a quiet trace of your agreement, like a candle left at an altar, not for recognition, but as worship, a gentle acknowledgement that your story is in holy hands and that the ink of heaven never dries. The pen turns softly now, and your new chapter begins with light, not loss. Every story rewritten by heaven carries a fragrance peace where there was pain, calm where there was chaos. You are walking in pages freshly inked with mercy, your past transformed into sacred texture for God's masterpiece. So, breathe deeply. The turning is complete. What once felt uncertain now feels divine. You are living proof that heaven's edits never erase, they redeem. Your next line begins with light, somewhere in the unseen realm. Witnesses are watching, not the kind that judge, but the kind that celebrate. Heaven's gallery leans close whenever faith takes form on earth. The unseen witnesses, angels, ancestors of faith, and those who finish their race, watch as you step deeper into your divine unfolding. They've seen this pattern before, an ordinary life touched by extraordinary grace. To them, your struggle isn't strange, it's sacred. Every tear that has fallen, every prayer whispered in exhaustion, every act of unseen obedience becomes light in the spirit realm. You may think no one notices, but heaven does. There's a cloud that surrounds you, a cloud not of gloom, but of glory. The ancient writer of Hebrews described it as a great cloud of witnesses. They stand, not as spectators, but as encouragers, reminding you that the same God who parted seas and silenced storms still writes through your life today. Sometimes you can almost feel them, the echo of those who endured before you. Their stories are woven into the spiritual air that carries your prayers upward. When you choose faith over fear, you join that same lineage. Your courage becomes another verse in heaven's eternal song. Imagine a grand stadium filled not with applause, but with reverence. Each soul there remembers the weight of the waiting, the ache of surrender, the cost of obedience. And when they see you choose hope again, they stand. They whisper to one another, "There another has risen." Entry, you are part of something vast, a living continuation of divine history. The same flame that burned in Abraham's eyes now flickers in yours. The same persistence that held Ruth steady as she gleaned in barren fields beats quietly in your chest. You are not just surviving, you're testifying. Heaven's witnesses don't gather because you're perfect, they gather because you're persevering. The strength that carries you forward is proof that grace is still alive in flesh and bone. When you walk by faith, you honor every life that once did the same. There was a story told in the early church about a young believer named Iran. He lived under persecution, hiding scrolls of scripture beneath the floorboards of his home. When soldiers demanded he deny his faith, he smiled and said, "I cannot deny what has already written me." Those who saw him stand that day carried his courage for generations. His name faded, but his echo remained. You are carrying echoes like that, whispers of endurance embedded in your spirit. The ancient words recorded in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, remind us, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." 1. That endurance is not about speed, it's about steadfastness. It's the quiet refusal to quit when no one claps. It's the decision to keep running even when the track is steep, knowing that heaven marks every step. And as you continue, remember this: heaven doesn't just watch you, it strengthens you. The witnesses are not distant ghosts of memory, they are participants in divine encouragement. When you feel sudden courage rise out of nowhere, that is the echo of their faith stirring in you. When peace comes after prayer, that's heaven's breath brushing against your shoulder. Even creation joins this watching. The trees sway not just with wind, but with worship. The stars shimmer not merely with light, but with remembrance. Every element of the universe recognizes divine endurance. When you refuse to stop believing, the cosmos itself takes notice. Your perseverance writes new stories in unseen realms. Angels carry reports of your faithfulness like letters of victory. Your prayers ripple beyond time, touching generations you will never meet. You are part of a chain of unbroken courage. And one day, when your chapter closes and heaven opens, you'll step into that same cloud of witnesses. You'll recognize faces whose stories you once read and voices you once felt in prayer. They will greet you not as a stranger, but as family, one who carried the flame faithfully. So keep walking, even when it's quiet, even when it's heavy. You are being watched by love, not by judgment. The unseen witnesses stand in awe, not of your perfection, but of your perseverance. The light that glows around you tonight isn't imagination, it's reflection. Heaven's gaze is upon you, and the story continues to unfold with every faithful breath you take. Completion has a sound. It isn't loud, it's peaceful. It feels like an exhale after a long journey, like the stillness that comes when something in your spirit finally aligns with heaven's rhythm. You've been walking through many turns and transitions. But this season carries a different fragrance. It smells like closure and new beginnings all at once. There's a quiet finality in your spirit because heaven has finished something inside you. The striving has stopped. The questions have softened. You are beginning to understand that what once broke you has now built you. The refining is done. The gold is ready. In this sacred moment, you are standing at the end of an old chapter and the threshold of a new one. Completion doesn't always look like triumph. It often looks like peace. It's not the noise of victory. It's the stillness of fulfillment. Heaven doesn't always celebrate with thunder. Sometimes it celebrates with silence. You've come through fire and flood, delay and disappointment. You've carried promises through storms and stood when others walked away. Heaven has watched it all. Every moment of faith has been counted. And now, something has shifted. You've reached the turning of completion, the place where God seals what He started. According to the writings of the prophet Haggai, chapter 2, verse 9, the glory of this present house will be greater than the glory of the former, says the Lord Almighty. And in this place I will grant peace. Do you see the pattern? Glory after glory, peace after pressure. The old fades, and the new rises brighter. The breaking led to building. The silence prepared the song. This is not the end. It's a transformation into wholeness. Completion isn't about what you've gained. It's about what you've become. The waiting purified your motives. The trials refined your discernment. The isolation taught you intimacy with God. What once looked like delay was divine design, preparing you for maturity. There's an ancient truth in the rhythm of heaven. Nothing ends without birthing something greater. Every finished chapter becomes foundation for what's next. What feels like closure is actually covenant, God fulfilling His word in you and through you. There was once a chosen one named Selan, a weaver from a quiet mountain village. For years, she worked on a tapestry she never finished. She feared she wasn't skilled enough, that her threads were too uneven. One day, as her hands trembled over the loom, she heard a still voice whisper, "It's complete." Startled, she stepped back and realized that the empty space she thought was unfinished had become the perfect contrast that made the pattern whole. You, too, may have looked at parts of your life and thought, "It's not enough yet." But heaven is saying, "It's complete in my sight." The empty spaces are not errors, they are balance. The missing pieces are not mistakes, they are breathing room for future glory. When heaven declares something finished, nothing can undo it. The seal of completion is divine, irreversible, eternal. Even the parts of your story that once felt like failure now serve as proof of faithfulness. And now, heaven invites you to mark this moment not as ritual, but as recognition. Every completed season deserves acknowledgement. It's your way of saying, "I see what God has done, and I honor it." End 4. So take a deep breath. Feel the peace of closure. And as a symbolic act of faith, comment the number 555 below. It's not a number of chance, it's the rhythm of grace. 5 represent divine favor, and 3 5s speak of abundant grace, multiplied, grace overflowing. By writing it, you are declaring, "This chapter of waiting is complete. I am stepping into the fullness of what's next." Then, when you type 555, let it be a seal on your season. A gentle amen written in digital ink. You are not closing this chapter in sorrow, but in gratitude. Heaven sees your acknowledgement as worship, your comment as covenant. The story doesn't end here, it evolves. Completion is not conclusion, it's continuation in a higher key. The author turns the page, not to finish you, but to feature you. So stand still for a moment and feel the weight lift. The work within you is complete, and the glory ahead is greater. Heaven has finished something beautiful in you, and what comes next will bear the fragrance of peace. Comment 555, not as superstition, but as surrender. It means it is done, and I am ready for what's next. Nah, the number 555 is not coincidence, it is covenant. Ach 5 echos divine favor past, present, and future. It means grace completed, grace renewed, and grace released into every unfolding chapter of your life. There are moments when you can almost hear it, the sound of new chapters unfolding. It isn't loud like thunder or dramatic like a trumpet blast. It's softer, deeper, like the hum of a river that has finally found its flow after years of drought. That is the sound around you now, the current of change, the melody of beginnings. You might not have realized it, but heaven has already begun composing the next movement of your story. The rhythm of your days is shifting. What once felt repetitive now feels alive again. The same tasks that once drained you now feel purposeful. Even your silence is charged with meaning. Something divine is waking up inside you, stretching its wings. For so long, you have walked in the echo of endings, grieving old seasons, trying to make sense of losses, searching for signs of restoration. But this new sound announces that resurrection is no longer coming. It has arrived. What you thought was over is stirring again with new breath. The same voice that spoke, "Let there be light," is whispering now, "Let there be you renewed, restored, radiant." Heaven's creative energy is rewriting your rhythm. Think of it like this. The pages of your story were silent for a while, blank and waiting. Now, they rustle again as the author writes in long, confident strokes. Each new line carries momentum. You can feel it in your spirit, a fresh wind, a new pulse, a gentle but unstoppable push forward. There's a moment between chapters where the old fades out and the new begins to rise. It's subtle, like the space between the last note of a song and the first note of another. That pause is sacred. You are standing in it now. The prophet David once wrote in the book of Psalms, chapter 42, verse 3, "He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in Him." And a new song. That is what heaven is placing in you. Not just words, but rhythm, fresh hope, renewed confidence, restored joy. The music of your soul is changing key. In previous seasons, your song was one of endurance. It was the melody of waiting, the harmony of faith through tears. But now, the tone shifts. This is the sound of becoming, the anthem of arrival. Every chosen one has a sound that follows them, an invisible vibration that moves through time, touching what is meant for them and calling it forward. Yours is growing stronger. The doors that didn't open before will respond differently now because your sound has changed. You no longer carry the frequency of fear, but of fulfillment. There was once a craftsman named Caleb who built harps for the temple in silence. His gift was creating sound for others, while never being heard himself. One evening, as he tuned the final string of a harp, a note rang out, so pure it made him weep. He realized then that though he had never played a song publicly, heaven had been listening all along. That note, born from hidden labor, echoed across generations. Your story is like that harp. Every silent act of faith, every unseen obedience, has been creating resonance. Now, the strings of your destiny are perfectly tuned. Heaven is ready to play through you. New chapters always begin with a new sound. Sometimes it's a word, sometimes it's a shift in atmosphere. Sometimes it's the soft assurance in your heart that says, "It's time. You are in that moment now. Do not rush it. Listen." The melody of destiny begins quietly before it moves powerfully. You may not yet know what this next season holds, but you can already feel its tone. It feels lighter, freer, full of color and movement. The air itself feels different because it is. Every note of your life is part of a divine symphony, and heaven has just turned the page of your score. The sound of your new chapter is hope, hope that no longer trembles, but sings. And soon, the world will hear what heaven has been composing in you all along. This new sound isn't noise, it's recognition. Heaven and earth are finally in tune over your life. Every closed door, every silent night was tuning your frequency for this harmony. What once sounded uncertain now resonates with purpose. The melody of your destiny is no longer rehearsal, it's revelation. You are stepping into the music written for you since eternity. Each note alive with grace. The sound of your new chapter is the sound of divine timing fulfilled. There is a crown that has been waiting for you, not a golden ornament of pride, but a mantle of purpose, shaped perfectly by every season you've endured. The crown of a chosen one is never placed in haste. It is forged through fire, molded through tears, and refined through waiting. And now, heaven begins to lower it gently over your life. You may not see it, but you can feel it, the weight of destiny resting upon your spirit. Not a burden, but a holy responsibility. It sits lightly, yet it commands posture. A crown requires you to lift your head. It reminds you of who you are and what you carry. The journey to this moment has been long. There were days you felt like you were crawling through shadows, holding fragments of promises that seemed to fade with time. Yet, every unseen prayer, every moment of surrender, every act of quiet faith was forming the structure of this crown. In the world of heaven's design, crowns are never handed to the untested. Each jewel within it represents a lesson learned, a battle survived, a temptation overcome. What the world saw as delay, heaven was using as decoration, engraving endurance into the gold of your calling. It's written in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because, having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Now, the crown of life is not a metaphor of glory alone. It's the symbol of divine trust. It means heaven believes you're ready to carry influence without losing humility, authority without losing compassion. The truth is, crowns aren't comfortable. They press upon the head and remind you to walk differently. You cannot bow to what once bound you when you wear one. The weight keeps you upright, not in arrogance, but in reverence. There was once a chosen one named Serin, a humble farmer who prayed more than he spoke. For years, he worked in the fields, unseen, uncelebrated, yet faithful. When drought struck his land, others abandoned their crops, but he kept sowing. One day, rain came heavy and relentless. The water filled his fields until they shimmered like mirrors. In the reflection, Serin saw something glowing above his head. It wasn't gold, it was light, the symbol of heaven's approval resting upon endurance. He realized then that crowns aren't given by men, they descend with faithfulness. You have a similar story. The crown that awaits you isn't a reward for perfection, but for perseverance. It is shaped by patience, carved by courage, and polished by prayer. And when it finally rests upon you, it changes how you see everything. The pain that once felt meaningless now feels necessary. The rejections that wounded you become confirmations of refinement. The seasons that humbled you turn into thrones of compassion. A crown is not the end of the journey, it's the beginning of reign. It signals the transition from surviving to stewarding, from waiting to walking in authority. But remember, the crown doesn't make you greater. It reminds you to serve deeper. The higher heaven lifts you, the more it expects your heart to bend toward others. Kings in heaven's kingdom rule by humility, not by hierarchy. You are stepping into a season where you'll need to walk like royalty, but love like a servant. You'll be called to speak peace into chaos, to lift others the way God lifted you. The crown you carry is not about ruling people, it's about radiating purpose. There's something sacred about seeing yourself differently. Once you recognize the crown over your spirit, insecurity loses its grip. You stop competing for validation because you already wear divine approval. You no longer need to prove your worth, you simply live it. The invisible weight upon your spirit is heaven's confirmation. You've passed the test. The breaking, the waiting, the silence, all of it led here. You are ready to walk as one who carries light. Not just for yourself, but for those who still wander in the dark. Lift your head. Straighten your spine. The posture of royalty isn't arrogance, it's remembrance. It's knowing who placed the crown and why you wear it. You are not just surviving anymore. You are reigning not above others, but above your past, your fear, your doubt. The crown is here, and it fits perfectly. This crown isn't decoration, it's declaration. It speaks of battles conquered in silence, faith proven in storms, and grace that never let go. Wear it humbly, for it tells the world light has overcome, and you are living proof of victory. There are moments when heaven invites you not only to receive, but to respond, to let what has touched your soul ripple outward, like a quiet wave reaching unseen shores. This, chosen one, is one of those moments. The story written in you was never meant to remain hidden. Light that is kept only for itself eventually dims, but light that travels becomes legacy. The message that has carried you this far now begins to multiply through you. What heaven poured into your spirit, it now asks you to pour forward, to become the echo that reminds others there is still hope, still purpose, still divine timing at work. When the crown of understanding settles upon your head, it is not so you may stand taller, but so that others may see through you the radiance of grace. Every word that once healed you becomes medicine for someone else. Every scar you carry turns into a map for the lost. In this chapter, heaven doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for participation. You are no longer a reader of the story. You are a writer beside the author, helping to spread light one line at a time. There was once a woman named Arin, who, after walking through years of silence and heartbreak, began writing letters she never meant to send. Each letter began with the same words, "To the one who feels forgotten." She left them in cafes, bus stations, park benches, places where strangers might stumble upon them. Months later, she discovered those letters had traveled farther than she could have imagined. People wrote back. Lives had changed. What she whispered in faith had become a movement of healing. That is how heaven works. It multiplies small acts of faith into eternal resonance. As written in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 16, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father, which is in heaven." You see, letting your light shine doesn't require shouting. It only asks that you stay open, that you allow your story to breathe beyond your borders. What you have endured and overcome was never meant to end with you. It was meant to awaken others. Perhaps right now, someone, somewhere, is standing in the same darkness you once stood in. They need a sound, a spark, a sign, and maybe, just maybe, your quiet act of sharing becomes that sign. So, if this message has reached the deepest parts of you, don't hold it in. Let it flow outward. Share it like one would release a lantern into the night sky, not to be seen, but to guide someone home. You never know whose horizon your light might touch. And if this space has become like a well for your spirit, a place where words remind you of who you are, then consider staying close to it. Subscribe, not out of habit, but as a sacred yes to walk together through the rest of this unfolding. Think of it as joining a caravan of light bearers, each of us holding a small flame that together forms a constellation. Before you leave this chapter, pause and let gratitude settle in your chest. The fact that you're here, breathing these words, means heaven has been faithful. The storms that once threatened to drown you have turned into rivers that carry others. Now, if this message has touched your heart, leave a trace of your presence, like this, not as a digital gesture, but as an altar, an acknowledgement that you were here when heaven spoke something that felt like home. And finally, in the quiet space below, leave your whisper in the form of words, a reflection, a prayer, or even a single sentence. Comment below, not as routine, but as release. You may never know the weight your words will lift from another's shoulders. Sometimes the smallest echo becomes the loudest comfort. You are no longer just a listener, you are a vessel. What heaven writes through you will travel farther than you imagine. Each act of faith, each shared flame, becomes part of the greater light weaving across this world. Let this moment remain tender, a silent exchange between you and eternity. Heaven is still writing. But now, so are you. Like, share, comment, and subscribe as sacred expressions of gratitude, acts of light passing from one soul to another. Not obligation, not pressure, just beauty in motion. Because when you let your light travel, heaven smiles, and the story continues. And as your light travels beyond this moment, may every heart it touches remember, hope is still alive. Faith still works. And love, quiet, steady love, always finds its way home. There comes a sacred moment when what has been promised begins to unfold before your eyes, not as fantasy, but as fulfillment. You begin to see, in small and steady ways, how heaven's handwriting becomes visible in the details of your days. The prophecy is no longer distant, it breathes around you. You are walking inside what was once only whispered. This is the unveiling of the written prophecy, the moment when faith turns into form. It doesn't arrive with thunder or spectacle, it arrives with quiet precision. Like dawn slipping over the horizon. You don't notice the first light until you realize the darkness has already retreated. Every promise that felt delayed was never denied. It was simply developing beneath the surface. Like seeds under soil, they needed time, silence, and surrender to germinate. Heaven's timing always blooms exactly when your spirit has grown strong enough to carry what it prayed for. You are now witnessing what many do not live to see: the manifestation of mercy, the fulfillment of hidden words. What was spoken over you long ago, in seasons of faith and trembling, is now stepping out of eternity and into your reality. The Apostle Paul once wrote of this sacred unveiling in the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap, if we do not lose heart. This is your due season, the reaping of unseen labor, the arrival of divine alignment. The things that once resisted you now recognize you. The doors that refuse to open now swing wide, not because you forced them, but because heaven whispered your name on the wind. Every prophecy has its rhythm. First comes revelation, then resistance, and finally, realization. You have endured the middle part, the testing, the tension, the uncertainty, and now the third act begins. The script of heaven is unfolding scene by scene, and your obedience has made it possible. There was once a scribe in the old city of Jericho named Leor. He spent his life copying sacred texts, never realizing that one of those scrolls contained a prophecy about his own bloodline. Generations later, when his descendant stood before a great decision, those very words guided her path. Prophecies never die. They simply travel through time until they find their appointed vessel. You are that vessel now. Everything that has been spoken over your life, the dreams, the confirmations, the subtle signs are converging. Heaven's handwriting is merging with your footsteps. You no longer walk toward promise, you walk within it. It is a strange and beautiful realization, isn't it? To see that all the waiting, all the wondering, was worth it. That the journey wasn't random, it was rehearsal. You were being trained for the weight of answered prayers. The prophecy that once frightened you now fits you perfectly. You no longer question your worthiness, because grace has made you ready. Every scar, every detour, every not yet was heaven's way of ensuring that when this moment came, you would not collapse under its glory. Fulfillment doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like peace where there used to be chaos. Sometimes it sounds like laughter after years of silence. Sometimes it feels like rest after endless striving. That is prophecy realized when what you hoped for becomes the air you breathe. You've stepped into the living word. Every movement, every breath now echoes divine orchestration. You are walking proof that what God promises, He performs. The story that once seemed impossible has become the evidence of his precision, and yet there is still humility in the unfolding. For even now, heaven continues to write. The prophecy is not a period, it's a comma. Fulfillment is not the end of the promise, but the expansion of it. The moment one word comes true, another begins to awaken. Look around you. The people who once doubted you now witness grace in motion. The circumstances that once threatened to break you have become the backdrop of your testimony. The page that once felt blank is now filled with purpose, line by line. Divine ink flowing without pause. You may not recognize it fully yet, but you are living inside a miracle. You are the continuation of promises made generations ago, the living chapter of prayers whispered by those who came before you. Heaven's story is larger than your lifetime, and yet, somehow, you have been chosen to carry a part of it. Let that truth humble you. Let it steady you. Every prophecy fulfilled becomes a foundation for new faith, not just for you, but for those who will follow your light. The written prophecy unfolds gently, gloriously, without striving, and as it does, all heaven watches, smiling, because the word has once again become flesh through the life of one who dared to believe. There is a hush that falls over creation when a story reaches the point of glory. It's not the silence of ending, but of awe, the pause between the last word of a chapter and the first heartbeat of a new one. That is where you stand now. The light around you doesn't blind, it blesses. The air feels softer, heavier with meaning. The journey has come full circle. You began as a seeker, wandering through confusion and fire, learning to listen to the whispers of heaven in the noise of the world. You walked through breaking, waiting, and refining. You've wrestled with surrender and learned the rhythm of divine patience. And now, without realizing it, you've become the very thing you once prayed to be: steady, surrendered, radiant. The glory after this isn't a spotlight, it's a still glow. It doesn't shout, it settles. It rests quietly over those who have learned to live from grace, not striving. You are not the same as when this began. The storms that once frightened you have become the waters that carried you here. The wilderness you feared has become a sanctuary. In the beginning, you chased meaning. Now, meaning finds you. You no longer beg heaven for signs, you breathe them. Every sunrise feels like a verse. Every moment like a prayer answered by presence. The author has not only written through you, he has written into you. You are now part of the word, made visible. There was once a man named Natum, who carved wood for temples but never entered one. He said he wasn't holy enough. Yet, when he died, the doors of the temple glowed for days. The priests said the wood of the altar sang. He didn't realize he'd carried holiness in his hands the entire time. You, too, have become sacred through your service. Every small act, every unseen kindness has carved sanctuaries within you. Heaven's glory isn't always golden, it's gentle. It looks like laughter after long sorrow, like forgiveness where bitterness once lived. It sounds like peace in the place of fear. It moves through you quietly, transforming ordinary breath into worship. As it is written in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 14, "For the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea." Oh, when that prophecy isn't distant, it's here. You are part of that fulfillment. The glory that covers the earth does not descend in clouds. It flows through people who carry heaven within them. You are one of those carriers now. The glory after this doesn't remove you from the world. It roots you deeper into it. You are not meant to escape life. You are meant to embody light within it. Glory turns your existence into reflection. The world looks at you and sees grace staring back. Sometimes you'll feel that weight of light, a kind of holy gravity that keeps you grounded while your spirit soars. It's heaven's way of balancing wonder with wisdom. You are learning to hold both, the mystery of what you don't understand and the peace of what you finally do. This moment is not a conclusion, it's a coronation of completion. You've walked the long road from revelation to realization, and now you stand crowned in clarity. The path ahead will still twist and turn, but your footing is different now. You walk not as one seeking direction, but as one who is direction, guided from within, connected to the pulse of eternity. You will notice that your words carry new weight. They comfort where they once questioned. You'll see that your presence shifts rooms, not through effort, but essence. That's the mark of glory. It transforms you quietly until transformation itself becomes your natural state. And when you look back, you'll see how perfectly it all fit: the fire, the silence, the breaking, the rising. Every fragment was prophecy. Every delay was design. Nothing was wasted. Not a single tear or trembling prayer. The glory after this is not reward, it's revelation. It shows you that the divine was never far. It was always near, shaping your becoming. The crown on your head, the light in your chest, the peace in your breath. They're all proof that heaven doesn't just visit, it dwells. So stand in this moment with stillness. You've arrived, but not ended. You've completed, but not concluded. The story continues, but the tone has changed forever. You are now both the reader and the revelation, the page and the pen, the promise and its fulfillment. The greatest chapter is not the one you waited for, it's the one you're living right now. And now, chosen one, take a deep breath. Let everything that has been spoken settle quietly in your spirit. You've walked through the pages of awakening, endured the edits of transformation, and reached the place where your story glows with divine authorship. The greatest chapter of your life is no longer coming, it has begun. But remember this, stories like yours are not meant to stay within one heart. When heaven writes through you, it intends for others to read through your life. Somewhere out there, someone is standing where you once stood in silence, in fear, in waiting, and they need to know that light still finds its way. So let this be your gentle response, your offering back to the source that carried you here. Share this message like a lantern released into the night sky, drifting toward a soul that needs warmth. Let your obedience travel farther than your name ever could. And if this space has become a refuge for your heart, remain close to it. Subscribe, not out of habit, but out of hunger for words that heal, strengthen, and remind you who you truly are. Let this be your meeting place with the divine rhythm that continues to speak. Before you close this final page, take one last sacred pause. Look at how far you've come, how much you've grown, how much light you now carry. Mark this moment by leaving a quiet trace of gratitude, like this message, as a sign that heaven's words reached you here, right where you needed them. Then, whisper your reflection into the world below. Comment, not for attention, but as testimony. You never know who might find hope in your echo. The pen rests now, but the light continues through you.